Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Tung. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. We start our class with meditation, so I'm going to guide you guys in a meditation session, and then afterwards I'll share a talk with you guys from this book. This is the guide that we use for this particular program. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, and each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, and today we're in chapter 20, which is titled Animal to Human, The Evolution of Our Consciousness. This is where you're learning about how this path to enlightenment is to becoming a better and better human being, shedding these animalistic instincts that we have in the unenlightened state. Because what you'll see through the talk today is that what you're experiencing in the unenlightened state is an evolution of consciousness from multiple experiences that you've been having. And the goal in this life is to cultivate more and more wisdom and get to a point where you're functioning as a better and better human being. You also learn about what the Buddha taught about these 5 realms of existence. And we'll talk about those types of things and understanding past lives and things of this nature. So I'd like to welcome all of you guys here and welcome to everyone online. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start is with some chanting in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you would like to chant along, there's chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a chanting sheet, and that way you're able to chant along. Yeah, you're welcome to help yourself. No need to just sit. You can get one if you like. For those of you guys online, this chanting sheet is on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. If you click on free books, you can scroll down towards the middle of the page, kind of 2/3 of the way down, and you'll see these chanting sheets there. If you understand the origins of chanting, you'll know that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, anything like that. The way that the Buddha used chanting as a way to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. It was used as a learning tool, as a learning device. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. They didn't have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this during the lifetime of the Buddha to be able to study the teachings. So they just recited the teachings orally in order to commit them to memory. So this is a learning tool, as a learning device during the lifetime of the Buddha, where today we use it as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. There aren't any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer in the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing those kinds of things associated with his teachings, they're actually not his teachings. He never taught any of those kinds of things. Everything he taught is about training your mind, developing your mind, and becoming a better and better human being, a better person. If you look at the English translations of these chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself, because he wouldn't have gone around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, because this would be ego or arrogance if someone did this. It'd be putting yourself above others. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't do that. You don't have an ego in the mind. So he wouldn't have created these chants and said, here, chant these to me out of respect for me. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and all these other feelings to this peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these chants actually came from his students, either during his life or after his death. So we're going to be chanting these on the way into meditation. You're welcome to join in. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance where I'm essentially going to be teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be this period of time of quietness where we're all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining online will just all be meditating at the same time. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. Getting to enlightenment is to eliminate your frustration and agitation, your annoyance. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing these feelings, but what the Buddha discovered is what's going on in your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's not the outside world. So what the mind does in the unenlightened state is it craves permanence. While you live in an impermanent world, things are constantly changing. So if you're in a meditation craving permanent silence and you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed. But if you understand that the world is impermanent and it's constantly changing, when you hear a sound, it's like, well, of course, that's the way that the world works, that it's impermanent, that the sound's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. And now you can be at ease and rest peacefully. Then we're going to come out of that meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand this topic of the evolution of your consciousness going from animal to human. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position to be able to help you. There isn't just one way to actually sit in meditation. There's multiple ways. You can sit using any of the suggestions or recommendations that I share, or you can come up with something on your own. If there was just one way to sit, this would be permanence. And we don't live in that world. We live in an impermanent world. So different people are going to find different things to be comfortable. So you can use something that I'm sharing, or you can come up with something on your own. It's really up to you to decide how you would like to sit. But if something that I'm sharing helps you, wonderful. And if not, then you can find something for yourself. So if you're on the floor in a chair, maybe you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair, you can sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this can impede the circulation in the lower body and cause pain. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and allows the circulation to flow in your legs. And then in terms of what the Buddha did, he actually put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use this, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way, because that would be permanence. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. The same thing's true for someone who's in a chair or in a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like as well. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. It's helpful if the upper body is erect. This helps to keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, your mind will be more attentive during the meditation, so you can actively train the mind. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid with the upper body, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease into the meditation. You're welcome to join, and then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Dhammang namasami. Supatipano emahakavato sawaka sangho sanghang namami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso emahakava arahang samma sambuddho. Vicacaranang sammuno sakato rokavitu anutero purisa dhamma sati satatawa manusanang poto bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind focused on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Emakewa Potang Makewanang Apivateyami Sawakato Emakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Emakewato Savakasangko Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusrang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program. What I'm going to do is help you guys to understand this chapter 20 of the evolution of your consciousness from animal to human. This individual who we refer to as the Buddha figured out over 2,500 years ago how to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is, where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that can be eliminated out of the mind. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing these feelings, but it's actually what's going on in your own mind. You can see this through the teachings of the Buddha, where you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. This is why you can actually eliminate them. Whereas if it was the outside world that was causing these feelings, you'd never actually be able to eliminate them. The Buddha discovered these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind that are keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. And when you have these pollutions in the mind, you'll keep experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings over and over and over again. But when you train your mind using the tools and the techniques that the Buddha taught, and you uproot these pollutions out of the mind, you'll see that the mind moves closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. Not only will you eliminate anger, sadness, frustration, and all those other feelings, but you'll notice the mind is performing optimally by the time you get to enlightenment, because it doesn't have these pollutions any longer. So you'll have focus, concentration, connection, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that all your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming, because in the unenlightened state, you'll have a certain amount of bitterness, harshness, and hostility, and you'll put that out in your relationships, maybe even feeling justified in your conduct, thinking that the other person is causing you to be producing that bitterness and hostility. But in reality, it's coming from your own mind. And when you put out that bitterness and hostility in your relationships, it's damaging your relationships. You would like to get to a point where you can be loving and kind and warm and gentle with everybody around you. But you can't do this with the unenlightened state when the mind has these pollutions. So by the time you get to enlightenment, your relationships are really harmonious. They're all at ease because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile anymore. And you'll see your relationships really improve. Oftentimes people think the way to improve a relationship is to try to change the other person. But you can't improve your relationships by trying to change other people. That's the mind craving permanence. You need to actually do the work to change your own mind. And by changing your own mind, that's what's actually going to improve your relationships. You can get to a point where you don't even experience a bad mood any longer. By the time you get to enlightenment, it would be physically impossible for you to experience a bad mood. So the Buddha taught how to get your mind to this point where the mind's experiencing this enlightened mental state. It's through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you're experiencing this. There's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You can't believe your way to this enlightened mental state, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because someone convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. So you need to learn, examine, and investigate teachings. You need to learn them intellectually. Then you need to reflect on those teachings to verify if they're true or false through your own direct experience. Then you need to practice these teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and training your mind, and that's what's actually going to produce the results. So the Buddha taught this whole path of how to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. As part of his teachings, he also taught the cycle of rebirth, that beings are continuously being reborn over and over and over again, and he taught these 5 realms of existence, of the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. Remember, all of the teachings of the Buddha, they're not based in belief. So you would never be interested in believing the cycle of rebirth or these 5 realms of existence. These are things that can be independently verified. You might not have the wisdom to know how to independently verify these things right now, but that's something that you can develop as part of your journey on the path to enlightenment. The Buddha taught these 5 realms of existence and the cycle of rebirth for specific reasons. The first reason is because it's actually true. You can independently verify it. And what the Buddha is doing is he's not teaching you rules and commandments. He's not telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing in your life. He's not giving you rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship and prayer. There's not one person sitting at the top of Buddhism telling everybody else what to do. That's not what the Buddha did. Instead, he's explaining to you the way the world is around you. He didn't explain to you the way the world should be, and that if everybody follows rules and commandments, the world's going to become a better place. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And the way the world is that beings are being continuously reborn over and over and over again, and there are these 5 realms. And you need to be able to independently verify this as part of your journey to enlightenment. And as people go deeper and deeper into the teachings, I help them to be able to understand how to independently verify these things. Today, I'm going to introduce you to some things that are going to help you to be able to start understanding this, but it's not really anything that you can necessarily independently verify today. But there are some things in here that I'm going to help you to be able to see that you can independently verify. So the Buddha taught these things for a reason, because it's true. But also, if you start learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha and you're uprooting these pollutions out of your mind, there's the potential that you might start observing your past lives. Right now, you're probably just believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life, other than the fact that right now, maybe you can't remember what your past lives were. But as you start training your mind and you're uprooting this pollution out of your mind, you might actually start having memories of your past life. And if you didn't understand that this is the way the world is, it could really actually shake you up. Like, say, for example, you started having vivid memories of being murdered, and these were recurring memories that just kept coming up in your mind over and over and over and over and over again. If you didn't understand that these were past life memories and you can just put them to the side and just continue on in your life, it could really shake you up that you're having these vivid memories coming in your mind over and over and over again. So understanding that these are past life memories are really helpful, because it can help you have a stability of mind in this life. Or for these 5 realms of existence, existence, some people can actually see some of these beings. When we talk about the hell realm, sometimes people think it's deep down in the core of the earth somewhere, or that the heavenly realm is way up in the sky somewhere. But in reality, all these beings are in the same time and space. So just like there's a human being sitting in this chair right now, if I got up and left, there could be an animal that comes and sits in this particular seat, like a squirrel could come in here, or a cockroach, or a dog or something like that. We're all in the same time and space. So these hell beings, they're formless beings. They don't have physical form, but they're in the same time and space as us. Same thing as the afflicted spirit realm, which are like ghosts, and then the same thing with the heavenly realm. They're all in the same time and space. So some people can actually see these beings. Even though they're formless beings, some people can actually see them. So if you don't understand that that is true reality, you could think you're going crazy, and your mind could be really shaken up when you start seeing these types of things. And some people can even hear communication from these beings because they're in the same time and space as us. Some people can hear the voices of hell beings, or afflicted spirits, or heavenly beings. And if you didn't understand this is the way the world truly is, it could really shake you up. But if you understand this is the way the world is, and you can just move on, and just like you can ignore a conversation at a restaurant when 2 tables over, someone's talking a little bit loud, and you can ignore those 2 human beings that are talking, you can do the same thing with these other beings from the hell realm, the afflicted spirit realm, and the heavenly realm. You can just ignore it if you like, right? And now your mind can stay stable and steady instead of thinking that you're crazy or something's wrong or something like this. So I'm going to help you guys to understand these things that the Buddha taught, and just understand that he taught it for a reason, because it helps you to have a stability of mind, because you can understand this is the way the world truly is, that you might actually start having memories of past lives. You might actually start seeing beings in other realms, and you might actually start hearing voices from beings from other realms. This is a normal thing that people experience as they're training their mind on the path to enlightenment. So I'm going to teach you about this topic of animal to human, the evolution of our consciousness, because we've all been evolving from existence to existence to existence, and many of us have been reborn out of the animal world into the human world, and now in this human world, we have an opportunity to train our mind and be able to get to this enlightened mental state. And you can see that this is gradually occurring, because as you're training your mind slowly but surely, there'll be situations where you were once angry and frustrated and irritated, and you're in that same exact situation, and your mind is quite peaceful and joyful. And that's how you'll know that these teachings are actually working. So as I talk here this morning, I'm going to be pausing a few times, opening up for any questions that you guys might have. If you have questions here at the temple or online, you guys can ask those. Here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl there, and there's some up here as well. All you need to do is get a microphone, take it back to your seat, press the gray button. You'll see the lights come on. And if you hold this up to your chin, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share it with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, if you have questions, you can put this into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions you like that way. So in order to understand this topic of animal to human and how you've been evolving into better and better existences throughout your life, we need to first understand the problem. And these are things that I've actually taught already in this program, because we're in chapter 20. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of recap some of the things that I've been teaching, because I know not all of you guys have been here throughout the time that I've been teaching this. You need to understand the problem of why the mind's functioning as a human being very much like an animal. We are not animals. We are actually human beings, but the unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal. And there's reasons for that. So the first one is that the mind has what we refer to as the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. This is oftentimes described as craving, anger, and ignorance, or some people call it greed, hatred, and delusion. This gives you a high-level understanding of the pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. What craving is where the mind is longing, yearning, and it's chasing after the objects of its affection. The mind thinks that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases chases it and chases it and chases it, much like a dog chases a rabbit, right? Or a fox chases a squirrel or something like that. It's the mind in the unenlightened state. The human being will chase and chase and chase. The mind's like, what do I need to feel better here? Oh, I know what'll fix this anger that I have. I know what'll fix this sadness. Let me get some more money. That'll fix everything. And now the mind will chase after that, right? Or the mind will think, what do I need to feel better? A new boyfriend, a new girlfriend. That'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. And you'll chase after that for a while. Or maybe it's a trip to Thailand. You'll be so excited to come to a trip to Thailand. So the mind will crave and long and yearn. And if it gets what it wants, it'll experience happiness, excitement, elation, some pleasant feeling, because it's getting what it wants and what it expects. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, if it doesn't get its cravings, desires, attachments fulfilled, that's where the anger, the frustration, and the agitation is arising. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and it's sunny and you get so excited about this is the mind's craving, desire, attachment, because it's longing, yearning for the sun. And maybe you'd like to go outside and go hiking and play outside, and you get so excited about that. But the problem with that is that that's not permanent. The sun is not permanent. So if you base your happiness on the sun, that means you can only be happy when it's sunny. So when it rains, you experience sadness or frustration or some other discontent feeling because the mind's not getting what it wants. Or if you get really happy and excited when your bank account balance is up here, then that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. The only thing that's happening here is change. But the mind is going to perceive these discontent feelings as being caused by something external. The mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence, but you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is constantly changing, but the mind craves permanence. That's why when you got together in that relationship with the boyfriend or girlfriend, you were so happy at the beginning, so excited. But then when you guys broke up, you experienced anger, or sadness, or frustration. Or maybe you were lonely or bored or missing this person. That's because the mind's holding on and craving permanence. And it can only experience happiness if it gets what it wants. So when you were in this relationship, there was a certain amount of comfort. But when you guys broke up, you experienced this impermanence. You experienced this change. So one of the ways to say this is that the mind craves permanence. Another way to say it is that the mind doesn't like impermanence in the unenlightened state. It doesn't like change. When things are changing in your life, the mind doesn't tend to like that. So you can take a moment here and reflect on what it is that I'm sharing. Because remember, none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. Think about a recent time where you've been angry or sad or frustrated. You'll be able to see that it's your mind craving permanence, that there was something you wanted or something you expected. And if you would have gotten what you wanted, you would have experienced happiness or excitement. But because the mind didn't get what it wanted or what it expected, it experienced some kind of painful feeling. Like I mentioned, the mind craves permanence, or another way to say that is the mind doesn't like impermanence. It doesn't like change. This is why if you look at your life, in the times that you've been struggling and having the most difficulties, that's when things have been changing. When you change living locations, when you change jobs or occupations, when your relationships are changing, these are the most challenging times in your life because the mind is holding on and craving permanence. So this isn't about guilt or shame, or this isn't about blame or fault or anything about like that. This is just to be able to see true reality of what's truly causing these discontent feelings. Because if you can understand what's causing them, then you can eliminate them. Because like I mentioned, if the mind is experiencing this craving, desire, attachment, if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. But if it doesn't get what it wants, this anger starts to arise. And when this anger arises, that's where the mind becomes bitter and hostile and harsh. And it firmly believes that there's something external that's causing it. You might think it's your mom and dad, or your brothers and sisters, or your boss or coworkers, or your friends, or somebody like this that is causing you to be angry. So what the mind will do, because it doesn't understand that it's the mind itself that's causing these feelings, is it will tend to push people away, or it'll push the situation away. This is called aversion, where you're pushing people away. You might have pushed people out of your life, but you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get irritated or annoyed. If that person was the true cause of your problem, when you push them out of your life, you'd be peaceful and joyful from that point forward. Or the second thing you'll do when you don't understand that it's your own cravings that's causing these feelings is that you'll tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another being, trying to fear it into doing things your way. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll tend to put your expectations on people and try to pressure them and get them to do things your way. Because the mind has these cravings and it wants things to be a certain way. It's craving this permanence. And it's almost trying to create this little bubble that you live in. And if somebody comes into your bubble and they're not doing what you want them to do, you'll push them out of your bubble. Or you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile to them, trying to fear them into doing things your way. Or you'll put expectations on them and try to pressure them to do things your way. And people might actually be doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, and they're putting expectations on you. So where this is coming from, this craving and anger, is it's coming from this third one here that oftentimes people refer to as ignorance, but a better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality. Because the Buddha wouldn't have used the word ignorance, because this is like a derogatory, demeaning, and degrading way to refer to somebody. And an enlightened being doesn't talk down to people like that. Instead, the Buddha would have used the phrase like the unknowing of true reality, or confusion, or misunderstanding, or misperception. This is what the mind has in the unenlightened state, is that it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And because it doesn't understand and it lacks wisdom, it continues to crave and it continues to have anger. It stays stuck in this unenlightened state. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's actually because of this ignorance, this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom, that the mind continues to crave and it continues to have anger. So that's why everything on the path to enlightenment is about the cultivation of wisdom. Because if you can cultivate wisdom and you can see the truth of what's really happening in the world, now with that wisdom, you'll actually eliminate your craving and you'll eliminate your anger. And you can get to the point where your mind's liberated, where it's free, it's completely peaceful, and it's completely joyful. Because when you're experiencing stress and anxiety and frustration and all these other feelings, your mind's not free. It's all bound up. So there's this better way of life that the Buddha taught. And the first part of that is being able to see the truth that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because as long as you blame other people for what it is that you're experiencing, you'll just continue to push people away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, and put expectations on them, and you'll never actually solve the true problem, addressing the true source of the problem. So this craving, anger, and ignorance, these three unwholesome roots, or these three fires, this is what's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state, and it essentially has very animalistic instincts, where it's growling and roaring at other people. That's what's happening when you're being bitter and harsh and hostile. It's like a lion growling and roaring at another being, trying to fear it into doing things your way. There's also something called personal existence view and conceit in the mind. This is a deeper level of detail than craving, anger, and ignorance. This is part of what we call the 10 fetters. There's these 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind that the Buddha discovered. And when you understand what these pollutions are and the tools and the techniques of uprooting them, you can actually eliminate them out of the mind. And this is where the peace and the joy comes in. You're purifying your mind more and more, and you're getting rid of these pollutions, and you can see your mind becoming more peaceful. But as long as you have these pollutions in the mind, you can't actually experience the peace and the joy. So one of the very first pollutions that the Buddha discovered is called personal existence view. This is where the mind is clinging to your self-image or your self-identity, thinking that this is who you are as a person, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be happy if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. So, for example, the mind will cling to your self-image. Like if you go to a social situation and you spill something on your clothing, you might be embarrassed by that. That embarrassment is coming from your personal existence view, because the mind's clinging to this body, it's clinging to this self-image, craving permanence, wanting others to perceive you in a certain way. And you can only be happy if they perceive you that way. So if your clothes are clean, you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. But if your clothes have spaghetti sauce all over them, maybe you think like, they're going to think I'm a slob, and now I don't want to be perceived that way, right? Or maybe you stood in front of a mirror and you saw that there was a pink pimple or a wrinkle or a mole, or you started losing your hair, or you started having gray hair. And if you looked in the mirror and you were shaken up by this was your personal existence view, clinging to this body and only feeling comfortable if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. Or maybe you stood in front of your closet thinking, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And you put on a certain set of clothing and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, that's not it. I can't go outside looking like that. So then you put on another set of clothes and you're like, no, that's not it. And you put on a third set and you're like, all right, now I feel comfortable to go outside. This is your personal existence view, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be comfortable if you're being perceived that way. When I was a kid, I used to get out gel and mousse. And I would run it through my hair and try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I would go to school. And sometimes I would do this for so long, I would actually miss the school bus. And maybe you had some of these kinds of experiences too. This is personal existence view, where the mind's clinging to the body and only feeling comfortable when you're being perceived by others the way you want to be perceived. You can also do this with your self-identity in the mind. You might be clinging to a certain culture, an ethnicity, a sexual orientation, a nationality, or a job or occupation. And you might think that this is who you are as a person. Like, for example, I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Spanish, or I am Chinese. Any of this I am around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, or your job or occupation. You might think that this is who you are as a person. So now when you're at a restaurant and two tables over, somebody's saying something fondly about the nationality that you're holding on to in your mind. Maybe they're talking very politely and respectfully about the nationality that you have. You might get all these pleasant feelings. It's like, wow, they're talking about me, right? All Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. You might hear this someday, right? I've never heard it, but maybe you might hear it someday, right? And now you get so excited and happy about that, right? But then it's only a matter of time before two tables over, somebody says something degrading and disparaging about your nationality. And now you're frustrated or angry or irritated. This is the mind's personal existence view, clinging to this idea of who you think you are. Right? This being is not an American. This body was born on a land that people refer to as America, but the mind doesn't have to adopt the identity that I am American. Or say you have a certain job or occupation. Say you got into this job, maybe you were a police officer, right? And you thought, I am a police officer. And now as you're doing that job, you feel really great. But maybe after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you retire or you get injured or laid off and you can't do that job anymore. Now maybe you're driving a taxi and your mind's identifying with I am a police officer. And now you're disgruntled and frustrated driving that taxi. Or say you got involved in a relationship and you thought, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. And now as long as you guys are together, there's a certain amount of comfort there. But when you guys broke up, you didn't identify with I am single. So the mind's uncomfortable with this I am single stuff because the mind's identifying with I'm a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because this uncomfortableness that the mind was experiencing, it felt like the way to solve it is to reassume this identity of who you think you are, which is I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend. So this is called personal existence view. You actually needed this when you were in the animal world because if you didn't understand, I am a deer and that is a tiger over there, and now I need to run because it's going to come and eat me, right? You wouldn't be able to survive. But in this human realm, we actually don't need that. We can actually cultivate wisdom and make wise decisions and realize, that's a tiger over there. Let me get myself out of here. I shouldn't be here, right? We don't have to have this fear in the mind that a deer has because the fear isn't actually helping you. It's just shaking up the mind and causing it to be making unwise decisions. But as a human being, we can actually get rid of this personal existence view where if somebody says, wow, you look so handsome, you look so beautiful in that shirt. Wow, it really brings out the colors of your eyes. We don't have to experience pleasant feelings because of that. We can just say, oh, thank you. I appreciate your kindness. You're so nice. Because then when somebody says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? Now you can just be calm and you can be like, oh yeah, I'm actually going outside. Yeah, I like this haircut. It's kind of nice. I thought it was nice. You don't have to be upset and frustrated just because somebody's commenting about this body, right? But if you have personal existence view in your mind, you'll get happy and excited when somebody says something nice about this body. But then when they say something unkind, you'll get frustrated and agitated or annoyed. And you can't control what other people say and what other people do. All you can do is control your own mind. So this personal existence view is part of the problem in the mind. And then there's conceit. What conceit is where the mind's measuring and comparing, thinking of yourself as being above people or below people. And you might be talking down to people, thinking that you're superior than them. Or you might be putting yourself below people, thinking you're inferior. And now you're shaken up when you're around that person. Maybe like a boss or a celebrity or a politician or something like that. And as long as you're doing this, when you're putting yourself above people and talking down to them, well, people are going to sense that and they're just going to push you away. They're going to be disinterested in being around someone who's constantly talking down to them. Or if you're putting yourself below people and you're talking up to them, then now your boss doesn't have confidence that you can actually handle this project and do a really good job. And now your career is suffering because you're not able to advance in your career because they don't have confidence that you can do the job because you're all shaken up when you're around your boss, right? So this conceit in the human world, you actually don't need it. Instead of looking down on people or looking up to people, you can just think of everybody as being equal. You know, if you see somebody outside sweeping the street, you can say, hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. How are you? Good morning. Right? You can have a smile on your face. And then if you see the king or the queen of Thailand walking down the street, which I don't think you'll see, but if you see that, you can say, hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. Good morning. How are you? Right? You can just treat everybody the same. But if you have this pecking order in your mind where you're trying to measure and compare yourself to other people, you've got to constantly figure out who's above me and who's below me, because I treat those people one way and I treat these people another way. And now your mind's having to constantly switch between the two of these. And it's very exhausting for the mind to be able to do this. Whereas if you can just treat everybody the same, it's so much easier for you. Your mind can be at peace. So this conceit in the animal world, we actually needed it. If it wasn't for conceit, we wouldn't have survived. Because when we were a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male, who's the alpha female. They're going to teach us how to hunt. They're going to teach us how to survive. They're going to teach us how to be better wolves. And when we were in a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch in our herd. Because if we didn't know who the matriarch was, we wouldn't have learned where the food is, where the watering holes are, where the migration paths are. We would have just been a roaming elephant in the jungle, not really understanding how to survive. So in the animal world, we needed this strong pecking order to be able to understand how to survive in that world. But when we come into this human world, we retain that. And now it causes us difficulties because we look down on some people and then we look up to other people with this pecking order. But you can eliminate this out of the mind. That's part of what the Buddhist teachings are guiding you to be able to do. So the current life, your current experiences in your previous lives that you've had in the past conditions your mind to function a certain way. But what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're becoming a better and better person. You're evolving to this higher consciousness where you're shedding your animalistic instincts and becoming a better and better human being, functioning as a human being, no longer having this pecking order in your mind, no longer chasing after that rabbit, no longer chasing after that thing that we do in the animal world. But the mind needs to learn about this, about what's going on in your mind, and see each one of these existences as you've had as a way to cultivate continued wisdom and become a better and better being. So the Buddha taught this cycle of rebirth and this continuous rebirth because this is what is actually happening. And as you learn more about it, you can evolve beyond these animalistic instincts to this peaceful and joyful mental state where you're no longer plagued by these animalistic instincts. So there's more for me to share with you here, but I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on what I've been sharing here as part of the problems that the mind has. Because after this, I'm going to start talking about the 5 realms of existence. And then ultimately, I'm going to circle back around and help you see about how the mind in the unenlightened state is functioning like an animal and how you can actually shed this. So do you guys have any questions on these problems here that I've been talking about that the unenlightened mind has? No questions? Okay. I don't see any questions online either. All right. So now we'll talk about these 5 realms of existence. In this book series that I share, it's 13 books. And in volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because that's where you typically are ready to start looking at this. And you're usually about 2 years into your development on the path with learning with the resources that I share by the time you get to that point. But here in this first book, in chapter 20, I share some information with you guys in this talk about the 5 realms of existence, just to kind of give you guys a heads up of what's being experienced here in these 5 realms, and also to be able to help you understand that what you're experiencing right now is the ideal existence. Being in this human realm, it's the ideal existence. But let me help you to understand each of these 5 realms. And I understand that some of you guys may not have had experiences to be able to independently verify this today, but in the future, you might actually have some of these experiences to be able to independently verify this. But I'll help you guys to understand these 5 realms, but you should never believe any of this. Don't believe what I talk about. Don't believe what's in books. Don't believe what other people talk about. But maybe if you're at the beginning of your journey on the path to enlightenment, you just take this information in and you kind of say, okay, I understand what you're teaching. And now you just set it to the side and you focus on the core teachings of the Buddha, which are things like the 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 Precepts, meditation training, and things like that. That's the core teachings that's training your mind to uproot these pollutions. But at a certain point, you're going to need to approach this, because as you're actually cleaning up your mind, you might actually start having interactions with beings from these realms. And if you do, you'll understand that that's normal. And this type of talk will be able to help you to be able to do that. But you might not have what you need to be able to independently verify this. So you might just kind of file it away to the side and then just focus on the core teachings of the Buddha. But nonetheless, this heavenly realm, this is a formless realm that beings are experiencing exclusively pleasant feelings. They don't experience any painful feelings, and they don't experience the neither painful nor pleasant feelings like displeasure or uncomfortableness. These beings can cultivate their consciousness to the point of getting to enlightenment, but they oftentimes lack motivation because they're experiencing exclusively pleasant feelings. They don't have the painful feelings. So they don't have motivation to be able to really get to enlightenment because they're just experiencing pleasant feelings. This realm and none of the others are permanent. Oftentimes people are taught that the heavenly realm is permanent. You can see in the world around you that everything is constantly changing. This is a universal truth, that the world is full of impermanence and constant change. This heavenly realm is the same thing because it's part of this world and it's part of this universal truth of impermanence, that beings are moving in and out of this heavenly realm. The ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha is not to die and go to heaven and live this eternal life. That's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to learn and grow and develop in this life, becoming a better and better person in this life, getting to a wonderful life now in this life. The Buddha's teachings aren't about an afterlife, because you need to be able to get to a wonderful life now, and you can see your minds gradually doing that. So the Buddha's teachings aren't about getting to this heavenly realm. If you've ever been taught that kind of thing, that's not true, and this isn't actually a permanent existence. Those beings in the heavenly realm are still in the cycle of rebirth, and they're being reborn in and out of these various realms. So this heavenly realm, the beings can get to enlightenment. It's a formless realm where they don't have physical form. They experience exclusively pleasant feelings. They can get to enlightenment, but they oftentimes lack motivation to do so. The human realm, you guys are probably most familiar with this because you're in the human realm, right? We have physical form. We experience all 3 types of feelings: pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant. Pleasant feelings are like happiness, excitement, elation. Those are very pleasant for you to experience. Then there's painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Very painful to experience those. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant. This is like shyness or uncomfortableness or displeasure. These are experienced by a human being, and they tend to be built-in motivation for you to get to enlightenment, because human beings, they don't like those painful feelings, and they don't like the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So they tend to have built-in motivation to be able to get to enlightenment. They have the capability of getting to enlightenment, and this is, we might say, is the ideal existence, because we have that built-in motivation. But oftentimes, even in the unenlightened state, people here in the human realm are complacent. Because you can hear about the teachings of the Buddha, you can learn that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and then people do nothing about it. They can sit in a talk where they're learning the Four Noble Truths, and they can independently verify and see that it's their own mind that's causing these feelings, but yet they go outside and they continue to be angry and frustrated and sad, and they just continue to live their life that way, rather than doing some work in order to be able to improve the mind. So even in the human state, even though it's the ideal existence and there's this built-in motivation of painful feelings and neither painful nor pleasant, beings even are still complacent, even in the human realm. But they tend to be less complacent than those in the heavenly realm. Then there's the afflicted spirit realm, which we might think about as ghosts. These are actually formless beings who don't have the ability to get to enlightenment in that existence. They're going to need to be reborn into either a human or heavenly existence to be able to get to enlightenment. They experience painful feelings and neither painful nor pleasant feelings, and they have extensive amounts of craving, desire, attachment to people, places, and possessions. This is where somebody might say, my house is haunted. Well, your house isn't really haunted. What it is there was this being who used to live here, possibly as a human being, and the being is holding on and clinging to this house, and it doesn't want to let go. And it's continuing to stay in this area, and it's just in this other existence. It's no longer in the human existence. It's in this ghost existence. It's in this afflicted spirit existence. But that's not a permanent existence either. That being will eventually move on from that existence and be reborn. But it can't get to enlightenment from there. So it's either going to be reborn into a lower realm from the afflicted spirit realm, or maybe into the human realm or into the heavenly realm. So beings are moving in and out of these realms. It's not like there's an order of sequence. Then there's the animal realm. The animal realm, these beings experience also pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. They actually can't get to enlightenment from that existence because they can't cultivate their consciousness enough to be able to get to enlightenment, but they can cultivate it enough to be reborn into a different realm. So they can move, say, up into a human realm or into the heavenly realm. So this is possible for animals. And oftentimes, people here in the human realm have come from this animal realm. This is why sometimes people are more bitter and hostile and harsh, perhaps, coming from the lower realms. But also you can have people who are reborn out of the higher realms, like the heavenly realm, and they tend to be more pleasant, more polite, and more respectful. It just depends on where people are coming from and what work they've actually done while they're here in the human realm. So in this animal existence, they tend to have these basic survival instincts where essentially animals are playing, they're fighting, they're sleeping, they're eating, they're having sex, they're killing. This is what animals tend to do, right? They're not sitting around meditating and things of that nature. They don't have the capability of learning that wisdom and then training their mind, but they can move upwards and they can also move downwards too. It just depends. Then there's this hell realm. The hell realm is a formless realm. They don't have physical form. These beings are experiencing exclusively painful feelings, and they have extensive amounts of craving, anger, and ignorance. They can't get to enlightenment from this existence. They ultimately are going to need to be reborn into other existences in order to be able to train their mind. All of these beings can cultivate their consciousness to a certain degree, but it's only in the human and heavenly realm that they can actually get to enlightenment. These lower realms in the hell, animal, or afflicted spirit, they can cultivate their consciousness, but not enough to get to enlightenment, so that cultivation of their consciousness helps them to move up. So for example, like if you look at a pack of monkeys, there's going to be some monkeys that are more bitter and hostile and harsh in that pack. And then there's going to be some that are more loving and more kind and warm and gentle, right? And then these beings are kind of moving out of that animal existence to other existences. So these are the 5 realms, and I'm just introducing this here so people understand that these exist, and they're all in the same in time and space, and helping you guys to understand a little bit about what they are. So do you guys have any questions on this, the 5 realms of existence? Yeah, Rachel.
I've seen representations in Thailand of hungry ghosts. Is that related to this, or is that a cultural thing? And if so, are they in the affected spirits realm or the hell realm?
Yeah, some people call the hungry ghost, I call it the afflicted spirits, and so do some other people, but some people call that a hungry ghost, right? Because they have so much craving. Here, they have extensive amounts of craving. So that's why they call it hungry, because their mind is longing, yearning, and craving something. So they call it the hungry ghost.
And the next question is, when beings are in a position where they can't cultivate consciousness to attain enlightenment, that seems not purposeful. So why does that, is there any explanation to why that stasis happens in a being's cycle?
Yeah, it's the reason why it happens is based on when you die at the time of death, whatever the level of pollution is in your mind, that's what's going to determine where you're born next. So there's no being that's overseeing all of this and deciding who goes where. It's the status of your mind. So for example, let's just say somebody was in the human realm, and let's just say they're stealing, they're killing, they're having lots of sex with lots of different people, they're lying, they're just having all this massive amounts of craving. Well, they're functioning very much like an animal while they're in the human realm. So because they have extensive amounts of craving, like an animal would have, killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, when they get to the point at the end of this life, they're going to be reborn into the animal realm. And then from that realm, they can extinguish those cravings. Because one of the ways to extinguish a craving is to cut it off and let it go. You've learned that. But then it's also to fulfill it. So if you go down into the animal realm and you're, doing lots of killing, and you're doing lots of stealing, and you're having lots of sex with lots of different beings, then that helps you to extinguish that craving to a certain degree, so that then you can come back up into the human realm perhaps, and now you'll make a better chance at cultivating your mind and actually getting to the point where you can actively eliminate those things and function as a better and better human being, where you're not killing and stealing and having sex with countless people.
So as you're explaining that, I was thinking male behaviors are born from craving, desire, and attachment.
Yes, that's right.
So good behaviors can also be born from craving, desire, and attachment, though?
Can what?
Can also be born from craving, like good behaviors also can be born from craving, desire, and attachment?
No, so these are called the three unwholesome roots: craving, anger, and ignorance, right? The three wholesome roots are generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So any kind of wholesome conduct is going to come from your generosity, your loving kindness, and your wisdom. But craving, anger, and ignorance is always producing unwholesome results. There's no wholesome results that can come from craving, anger, and ignorance. It's always going to produce unwholesome results. Mm-hmm.
Hey, David.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that like the spirit's realm, it's around us, but the heavenly and the hell realm, it's also around us, like in this also the same place.
Yes, same time and space. So this is why some people can actually see those beings or communicate with those beings, because they're in the same time and space as us. Now, the hell beings tend to congregate in places where dark things are occurring, right? Where heavenly beings tend to congregate where positive things are occurring. Like that's why sometimes people come to places like temples and they would like to just be here because, they're not surrounded by all these dark influences, right? But then also if you go to a very dark place where lots of unwholesome things are happening, that's where you have these formless beings that are hell beings or afflicted spirits, and you can be influenced by that. It's still ultimately your decisions, but these beings will congregate in places that are either, more dark versus more light.
Okay, and next question is, as these are formless helm, and they are also in a reborn cycle, you said before in different moments that they are going to reborn and there is a time, but there is like a precise time, or it's individual for each individual, or it's like how that works?
Yeah, for the formless realms, right?
The formless.
Yeah, so this was a question in your class this week, is people can understand like death of an animal or death of a human because your body just gives out, right? And like you don't have ability to sustain life anymore. So people ask me like, well, what about the hell realm, the afflicted spirit, and the heavenly realm? Because they don't have a physical body. Do they actually die? Well, the answer is yes. But what's happening is that when you're born into those realms, you have a set time frame, because there's no body that's going to just stop working. But as a being in a formless realm, when you're born into the hell realm, the afflicted spirit, or the heavenly realm, there's a set time frame. And the Buddha oftentimes describes the hell realm and the heavenly realm as being an eon, in multiple eons. And during his lifetime, the highest number that they could count to was the 100,000th place. They didn't have the word million 2,500 years ago. So the highest number that they could count to was the 100,000th place. So anything beyond that, he would refer to it as an eon. So he talks about the lifespan of a being in the heavenly realm or the hell realm as being multiple eons. And he gives exact periods of time, because we think about it nowadays as the heavenly realm and the hell realm. But the Buddha, when he talks about these realms, he actually has subcategories within each one of these realms. And depending on what subcategory you're born into, he explains how long your lifespan is being in that subcategory. And it's a set time frame from the time that you're come into that existence. There's a set time frame, and now it just expires. But oftentimes it's multiple eons that he's talking about for each one of those. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about Buddha's teaching. Do you think there's a hierarchy of which realm is better or worse? Because reading that, it looks like the human realm is where people might want to be, but I don't know what the Buddha's view is, so I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I don't think of it as a hierarchy, but I do think about, when we look at this, what would be the ideal place to exist? And it's the human realm, because the human realm, you experience all three feelings of pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. So you tend to have built-in motivation to be able to get to enlightenment. And you have the capability to get to enlightenment, because enlightenment would be the very best thing for you. If you get to enlightenment, your mind's completely peaceful and joyful. You don't experience any discontent feelings. You're living a wonderful life at that point. But in these lower realms of hell, animal, and afflicted spirit, even though I use the term lower realms, I don't think of it as a hierarchy. We just refer to it that way because we know that they can't get to enlightenment. It wouldn't be ideal to be here. The Buddha actually refers to these hell realm and this animal realm like a prison, because once you are there, it's very hard to get out. You have to go through many different existences to be able to get out. You will get out, but you have to go through many different existences, countless existences, to be able to get out. So being in the lower realms, you can't cultivate your mind to get to enlightenment. So it would be, you wouldn't really aspire to be in those realms. Being in the heavenly realm, this isn't ideal either, because you tend to be very complacent in this realm because you're experiencing pleasant feelings. So it's really the human realm, which is the ideal existence. But I wouldn't think of it as a hierarchy.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question. So if someone in this lifetime reaches enlightenment, what do you think would happen to the next life for that particular person?
The Buddha leaves this as an undeclared teaching. He doesn't say what does come next or what doesn't come next, because his teachings aren't based on an afterlife. He calls it out as specifically an undeclared teaching, that he doesn't teach what comes next for an enlightened being, because you need to get to a point where you're completely content and peaceful in the present moment, that your mind's not longing, yearning for something next. So we know that if you don't get to enlightenment, you will be reborn in the cycle of rebirth. But if you get to enlightenment, what comes next, he just leaves it as an undeclared teaching. But by that time, your mind is so peaceful and so joyful. If there is something next, okay, it's either as good as what you're currently experiencing or better. And if there is nothing next, okay, so what? You're completely peaceful and joyful now in the present moment. It doesn't matter. So his teachings aren't about an afterlife, but oftentimes that's what people are really focused on. But that's because their mind's longing, yearning for what's next, where you would like to get to the point where you're peaceful and joyful in the present moment, that your mind's not longing, yearning for what's next.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yes. Then what's the difference between the enlightenment state and the heavenly realm? Because both are content and happy and no desire.
So in the heavenly realm, there's still desire. They're experiencing conditional happiness, but they're not experiencing the same happiness as enlightenment. So there's what's called conditional happiness. Conditional happiness is where you're happy based on some condition. This is where the mind is still discontent. It's still shaken up. That if you get happy because it's sunny outside, then that means you're only happy as long as that condition is present. And when that condition changes, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. Here in the human world, you can understand that. In the heavenly world, they're experiencing conditional happiness. So if you've ever been so excited and you like tripped and fell, or you drop something, you can see that that conditional excitement is not desirable. And that conditional excitement arises, it changes, and it fades away. What you're interested to get to, which is what the enlightened being is experiencing, is they're experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to experience that. So in the unenlightened state, there has to be certain conditions, like my mom and dad do this, and my brothers and sisters do this, my boss does this, the weather is this, I have this kind of house, this kind of car, I have this much money in my bank account, then I'll be happy. So your happiness is actually shrinking because of the more conditions that you have. So those heavenly beings, they're experiencing conditional happiness, right? So they're not experiencing the unconditional happiness, and they still have craving, desire, attachment. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist in the cycle of rebirth.
So as human beings like us, say we did not get to the point of enlightenment, but when we die, is it possible to get to the heavenly realm? And what are the beings in the heavenly realm? And I know there are ghosts, there are, animals, there are people, real people, but what are the form? I mean, you say they are formless, but what do we call them in the real world, in the heavenly? I'm just confused about the heavenly realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You asked a whole bunch of things there. Can you start with just one thing?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we refer to the heavenly beings, heavenly realm people? I mean, not people. What do we call them?
Heavenly beings.
Could they be the deities some people worship in the temples?
That is not what would be wise to refer to them as, because the Buddha never taught worship. The things that people are worshiping in these deities and things like this isn't any part of the teachings of the Buddha. He never taught to worship deities, because that's not what's going to produce beneficial results for you. So what you see people doing, even if it's considered a Buddhist temple, if people are worshiping deities, that has nothing to do with the teachings of the Buddha. So I would encourage you to refer to this as heavenly beings. That's what these beings are, is they're heavenly beings.
Just one more question. Where do they come from?
What do you mean, where do they come from?
Did they come from human beings? Like human beings die and become that?
So you can experience the heavenly realm from any of these other realms. The Buddha even talks about from the hell realm, you can be reborn into the heavenly realm. He talks about how rare that is, but he talks about that it can actually occur. So there's not any kind of like order of precedence here. It's not like a ladder that you're climbing a ladder. It's that you can actually be moving in and out of any of these realms. You can actually go from the heavenly realm down into the hell realm. So this is possible to be reborn in and out of all of these realms. It's not just from the human realm that beings in the heavenly realm exist. Yeah, please. Sounds like your mic's not on.
The desire. So I asked this question. My dog passed away 1 year ago. So I just wondering, like, whether he will become my kid in the days to come.
There's no way to be able to determine that.
Okay.
Yeah. What I would encourage you to do is just let go.
I can't let go.
I know, because you didn't train your mind yet. But if you use the Eightfold Path, you'll be able to train your mind to let go.
Thank you. I'll do it.
Yeah.
So, through this like a cycle of rebirth, is there like, who is rebirthing? Like, let's say we're in the human realm now. When our body is not here anymore, is there something that stays and goes that is inside me? Or is it like an energy, is it like a soul? And is the same thing, the same energy that goes to this cycle? Or it changes into a different energy? Or
Okay, so the word that was used in the original text that the Buddha was documented as having used is the word samsara. This is the word that you'll see, because the original text is in the Pali language, and we're translating from that Pali language into English. And this word samsara has mostly been translated as the cycle of rebirth. That's what people call it. But if you look at how the Buddha talks about samsara, there's nothing that's actually being reborn. It's actually the cycle of new existence. That's a better way to actually think about it. That's what I talk about in this book, is I help people to understand that it's really not the cycle of rebirth, because there's nothing being reborn. It's a brand new body and a brand new mind every single time. The Buddha never talks about whether there is a soul or there isn't a soul, because the whole idea of a soul, it actually conflicts with the universal truth of impermanence and the universal truth of non-self. So the Buddha doesn't actually describe that there is a soul or there isn't a soul. So if anybody's talking about a soul related to the teachings of the Buddha, they haven't really penetrated into them enough to be able to see he never taught that. So what's moving from one life to the next is what we call craving and residual memories. You learned a little bit about craving today, where the mind is longing, yearning. Well, that moves from one life to the next, as well as your residual memories. This is how someone can remember lives from the past. So if we think about like a cardboard box, let's just say this cardboard box has a certain color, certain shape, certain texture, certain size, and it's a unique cardboard box. This cardboard box represents the mind, and this is the mind of person A. Well, at the end of this life, if there's contents in the cardboard box is going to dissolve, because the cardboard box is not permanent. Your mind is not permanent. It's going to dissolve. So there's craving and residual memories that are still there. The contents of that cardboard box need to find a new cardboard box. So now they're in the cardboard box B. This is a different color, shape, texture, size. This is person B. And now this mind of person B has cravings and residual memories from person A. And that's why person B can actually remember what happened in this life of person A, and maybe even lives before that, because it's been cascading of all these contents going from box to box to box to box. But nothing is actually being reborn. It's a brand new body and a brand new mind every single time. It's a brand new being, but you're operating based on cravings and residual memories from a previous life.
And so these cravings, do they have like, which shape? Is it like how do they pass on through these different bodies or minds? Is there through any kind of like form, or is it just like, I don't know?
It's not physical. A craving is inside the mind. It's the way that the mind longs and yearns. So say, for example, someone in the past was a carpenter, right? And they did carpentry work, and they were a handy person doing lots of work with tools and stuff like that. Well, when that being dies, if they still have a craving to do that kind of stuff, that craving and residual memories from their past is going to end up in this new mind. And now this person B, they could have those same cravings, where now, because of the work that was done in the past, where they hadn't extinguished their craving to do handyman type work, in this new life, they could be doing handyman type work, because now they're having that craving and residual memories from their past lives. So it's what's going on in the mind. It's not anything physical or tangible, but it's what's happening in the mind, this longing, yearning that the mind has. Same thing, like, that's what I was talking about, like a human being can function very much like an animal. Since that's our topic today, animal to human, let's just say in an animal existence, this being was killing and fighting and fierce. It was a tiger. Maybe it was, being very aggressive and hostile, and maybe even having sex with lots of different tigers. So now when that being dies and it's born into this new life, there's this craving and residual memories that go into this new mind, and now it's a human being. Maybe this human being turns out to be a serial murderer, right? Because they were so used to killing in their past life, and they never extinguished that craving, that now in this new life, now they're actually still having this urge to kill. And maybe they're still having sex with lots of people. Maybe they're raping their victims and killing them and all this kind of stuff. This is from their craving and residual memories from their past lives, that they were born from a existence like a tiger or a lion into this human realm. Because you could also have like an elephant, right, or a rabbit or a squirrel that's much more docile, much more warm and gentle. That being is born into a human existence, and now they're going to experience something different. They're not going to be aggressive and hostile and bitter. It's because these cravings, residual memories are going from one life to the next, and it's conditioning what you experience in this life. And now what you're doing on this path, which is what I'm going to ultimately get to here in a moment, is you need to shed those animalistic instincts, those cravings and residual memories that are still stuck around from your previous lives. That's what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is you're training your mind through these teachings and techniques that the Buddha is teaching you to get rid of those cravings and get rid of that aggression and hostility, because that's not serving you well at all. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, just like a last question. So then when I think about my previous lives, they were actually not mine, right? Were like other beings' lives.
Exactly.
And my cravings in this life will probably be those cravings or memories in someone else's life.
Exactly. It's like a sequence of events. It's like a chain of events. One way to think about it is if you had multiple candles and this candle was burning and it got all the way down to the end of the wick and there's no more wax, now there's a spark that lights the next candle. So they're completely different candles. But if you leave around trash in the mind, then the next being is going to have to deal with it, right? So the best thing you could do is clean up this mind, purify this mind, so that another being doesn't have to deal with that. Because if you purify this mind and you clean it up, and there are no more cravings in your mind, there's not going to be a next existence. So it's kind of like cleaning up the trash now so that someone else in the future doesn't have to deal with it. Because that's what people have been doing in the past. And that's why this being right here is now here. That this being is actually a collection of multiple experiences from past lives. But now you have a choice to make. What are you going to do? Are you just going to continue to go through life being angry and frustrated and bitter and hostile and harsh and lack this wisdom of what's really going on? Or are you going to see true reality that it is your own mind that's causing these feelings and now clean it up so that nobody else in the future has to deal with it? So if you get to enlightenment, that's wonderful because there's not going to be any more births. But if you don't get to enlightenment, at least you've done some work to reduce the amount of pollution that's in the mind, and then there's less for the next being to have to deal with. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just to follow up on this path to enlightenment, you mentioned about some people as they go through this process, they may start experiencing things, maybe this formless realm. I'm just curious about the mechanism behind that, and what are some examples of people's experience, like experiencing these heavenly or the spirit or the hell realm.
You're saying being in the human realm and observing your past lives, you're interested in understanding about that, right?
Either past life, but also experiencing these other formless spirits.
Okay, so I know you still have a question, but I'm going to advance the slide here and talk about this, and then we'll come back to your question. You have a question, right? Okay, so let me just answer this question here. Is the way that you start to experience the understanding of your past lives, but also being able to, communicate with beings in the formless realms and being able to see this, is it's moving to a higher consciousness. That as your mind is in the unenlightened state, it's like walking out of your house and you're on that street and you can see what's happening on that street, right? Because you're now walking outside of your house and now you're on that particular street. That's like being in the unenlightened state, that you can understand what's going on predominantly in this life. In the last 5 or 10 years, you kind of remember what's going on in this life. But as you're training your mind and you're moving to this higher consciousness, it's like moving to a higher vantage point. And now when you move to this higher vantage point, you can look over your existing life, and you can oftentimes see, just like these people can see all these streets and all these roads and how all these towns interconnect. It's the same thing, that when you move to a higher consciousness, you can see more of your current life, but you can also see more of your previous lives too, and how all these lives interconnect. So as your mind is moving to this higher consciousness, not only can you see more of your current life in your previous lives, but moving to this higher consciousness, you can have the ability to be able to see beings that are formless. Not everybody, but some beings can see that. Or you might be able to hear communication from that. That is how it's happening, because by lifting out the pollution out of the mind, your mind's not burdened by all that heavy pollution anymore, and it's functioning in this higher consciousness. And that's why some people can see those beings and some people can actually hear beings from these other realms. Some beings can experience this without even being enlightened, that on your way to enlightenment, or even some people even off the path to enlightenment, they don't even know what the path to enlightenment is, but they just have less pollution in their mind. And because of that less pollution, they can actually see these beings, or they can experience communication with these beings. So in terms of a couple of experiences I can talk about from my personal life, that there was a time where I was driving down the road. I was actually in the passenger seat. And as I was driving down the road, there was this lady in an all black dress. It was a very old traditional dress. This was in the USA. And she was standing on the side of the road with this suitcase. It was a very old suitcase. And when we drove past, I saw this lady standing there, and I was like, whoa, that's really weird. That's like a really old dress. I've never seen anybody wear that kind of dress before. And when I looked behind, after we went past, I looked behind and she had disappeared. She wasn't there, right? So that's how I verified the ghost realm. And there were other ways too. My son came home about a year ago and he said, Dad, I need to talk to you about the teachings of the Buddha. And I said, okay, sure. What do you have to talk about? He said, well, I need to ask you this question. He said, I was on the back of Mommy's motorbike and we were coming home from the mall, and there was this person in these red clothes standing in the middle of the road, and my mom drove her motorbike right through that person. Is that the afflicted spirit realm? And I said, yeah, that was a being from the afflicted spirit realm. He said, okay, thank you. I was just checking to make sure. Right? So this is a great example of how, if you understand that this is true reality, your mind can be completely stable and steady. My son didn't have nightmares. He wasn't scared. He wasn't fearful. He didn't have difficulties sleeping that night. He just understand, like, yep, this is normal. You're going to see a ghost from time to time, and this is normal. And Mommy drove her motorbike right through this person, right? And it was a ghost. It was this formless being. It wasn't a human being. So he understood, and he had no problems with it. So these are just a couple of examples, but you'll hear from different people. Some people have had these situations and some people haven't. So you should never believe in this stuff, but as you're training your mind, you might actually get to a point where you have these types of experiences or others. So you have a question?
Yes, I want to know when we die, how long does it take to reborn?
Yeah, each being's going to be different, but from what I saw, it can be as short as 500 years or as long as 2,000 years between lives. Oftentimes people think it's immediate rebirth, but it's actually not. It can actually take a very long period of time. So I imagine there's some beings that are shorter than 500 years or longer than 2,000 years, but this is the window of time that I saw from one life to the next.
And for this time, what happened?
You mean in between?
Yeah.
The Buddha doesn't really share much information on that. He gives a little bit of details. I don't have any recall of what happened in between. I have recall of previous lives, but I don't have recall of what happened in between. The Buddha talks about it very basically. He just talks about these stations of consciousness that the mind goes through, but he doesn't talk about much details because that's not really needed in order for you to get to enlightenment today, because what you need to do is train your mind to uproot these pollutions, and that's what's going to get you to enlightenment. What happens during that period of time, we have no ability to really understand that necessarily unless somebody ever recalls it. But even if you do recall it, it doesn't really matter, because right now you're in this human existence and you would like to train your mind from this human existence. We have some questions here coming in online. Judy, you have a question? Go ahead, ma'am.
Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
I put it in the chat as well. I was just wondering, is the way a person lives their current life, whether they're aware they're on a path to enlightenment or not, does that inform or determine what realm they'll be reborn into?
Yes. because these are natural laws that are affecting us, whether we're aware of them or not, just like the natural law of gravity. So even if somebody has no understanding of this path whatsoever, their pollution of their mind is either increasing or it's decreasing, depending on, what they're doing in their day-to-day life and how they're approaching the world in their mind. So they will be affected by whatever they are experiencing. So when they get to the end of this life, whatever the status of the pollution of their mind, they're going to be reborn in accordance with that. Just like the natural law of gravity, there's nobody overseeing it, turning it on, turning it off. It just happens as a natural law. The same thing is true about this natural law as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it looks like, I think it's Karen might have a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, David. I wanted to go back to the metaphor that you used before in terms of like the candle. You said like once the candle burns out, it lights the other one. And I guess my confusion was what happens to like the candle that was burnt out? Because what I'm understanding is that, it just like disappears forever.
Yeah, because, for example, in the human realm, the physical body is not permanent, so it's going to dissolve. It's going to go back to earth and water and wind and all these things. It's just going to dissolve back to, whatever material that it becomes. And then the mind itself, that's not permanent either, so that is going to dissipate and disappear as well. So this body and mind configuration that we have right now, it's only for a temporary period. And at the end of this life, the breakup of the body and the mind are going to separate. The body's going to deteriorate, and then the mind's going to dissolve. And then whatever contents are in that mind, craving and residual memories, it's going to go into a new mind, a new consciousness. Okay, looks like your mute's back on. So I think you got the answer to your question. Okay, I don't see any other.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So now what I'm going to do, since we talked about this is how an individual would see their births from the past is moving to this higher consciousness. Now I'm going to help you guys to be able to understand this evolution of your consciousness that you've been involved in. Right now you're in this human realm, but there's been countless existences in the past that your mind has actually been conditioned by, because on this path to enlightenment, the goal is to become a better and better human being. So the vast majority of the rebirths that we experience in the human realm are actually coming out of the animal realm. This is why oftentimes we function very much like an animal in the human state. We are not animals, we are human beings, but the consciousness, the mind itself, having evolved out of the animal realm, functions very much like an animal. This is why we're bitter and harsh and hostile, and we might steal or kill or have sexual misconduct and all these other things that we do in the human state. When we lack wisdom, we make all these unwise decisions. We function very much like an animal, even though we're not animals. The unenlightened human mind functions much like an animal in that an animal lacks memory. They typically don't have much memory, except for like an animal like an elephant. They usually have a better memory than, say, like an ant or a squirrel or something like that, right? So there's kind of a lack of memory in the human mind in the unenlightened state. Just like an animal functions through a praise and reward system, human beings function like that too, right? So like an animal, if you give it praise or you give it some kind of reward for a certain behavior that it does, it will tend to repeat that behavior over and over and over again. A human being is the same way. This is why we get degrees and diplomas and certificates, right? This is why we get, a promotion at work, because that reward, that praise that we get will tend to repeat those behaviors over and over and over again. Just like an animal learns from a pack of like species, human beings are the same way too. That we learn from a pack of like species. When we're around other human beings, we learn from those human beings. So if you grew up among people that are really bitter and hostile and harsh, your mind would have been conditioned by that to a certain degree, and you would have taken on a certain amount of bitterness, harshness, and hostility, because that's what you saw the human beings around you doing. Maybe your parents, your siblings, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents. If you grew up in a bitter and hostile and harsh environment, you learned that growing up. Whereas if you grew up around people that are more cheerful, more bright, more radiant, more polite, more respectful, then your mind's going to tend to gravitate towards that, because we learn from like species. A monkey learns how to be monkey from other monkeys. A snake learns how to be a snake from other snakes. So we have certain instinctive behaviors as human beings, but there's also a lot of learned behaviors. And these learned behaviors are going to be based on how we grew up and the people that we grew up around. So each one of these existences that we're having, we're taking on this conditioning of the mind. And what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're unconditioning the mind. So we even have these phrases in the human world where we'll say things like, you're acting like an animal, right? If somebody's being bitter and hostile and harsh and aggressive and arguing and fighting, you might say you're acting like an animal, or you might say you're fighting like cats and dogs, right? So even in this human realm, without people understanding the cycle of rebirth, we're actually using phrases that are actually in line with exactly what the Buddha taught, because in the back of our mind, we kind of understand what it is that we've experienced, but it might just not be present for us to be able to have it tangibly to be able to talk about. So we use these phrases because we understand that, yeah, this person is acting like an animal. They're acting like not a human being. They're acting like cats and dogs. They're fighting like cats and dogs. So we have these phrases in the human realm that we use. Humans are actually very fascinated with animals. That's why we have zoos. That's why we study animals. That's why we have animals in our houses, a lot of us. We have pets, or we have, as we grow up, we have stuffed animals, and we even wear animal prints. Sometimes we wear clothing that has animal prints. Sometimes people even wear the actual fur or the actual, body of an animal, right? They'll wear the actual fur or the leather and the skin of an animal. And if they're not doing that, it might actually be a fabric that's made to look like an animal print, because we're so fascinated with animals that we bring animals into our house, we sleep with them, we have stuffed animals, we go to zoos to study animals. We're very fascinated with animals as human beings because we were once so many different animals in the past. So what we're doing on this path to enlightenment is our mind is preoccupied with this craving, anger, and ignorance, just like an animal. So this human mind, this unenlightened mind, is functioning very much like an animal because it's untrained. And because of its being untrained, it functions like this animal. But what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're evolving from these animal consciousness into a human consciousness. Physically, you have a human consciousness right now, but it's been conditioned from these animal existences. So now what you're doing is you're shedding those animalistic instincts, becoming a better and better human, learning to not growl and roar and bite and snarl at people, but instead to have conversations and be able to speak gently with people and be wise in the way that you interact, learning how to be loving and kind, understanding that not everyone's going to do things your way. A lion, if a lion is around other lions and this lion doesn't do things your way, the way that they want it to be done, they will growl and roar and fight to death with this lion, right? That's what the unenlightened human mind is doing. If you've ever been in an argument with someone where you're trying to convince them that you're right and they're trying to convince you that they're right, it might have felt like a fight to death the way that you were fighting, right? But that's what an animal does. And now what you're interested in is evolving to this higher consciousness to become a better and better human being. So understanding that your mind is functioning like an animal in the unenlightened state actually helps you to be able to see what you're doing, so that when you see yourself acting like an animal, you can choose to shed that and choose to move on beyond that. Because this cycle of rebirth is giving you opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to become wiser and wiser and function as a better and better being. So this cycle of rebirth can end through training your mind, where now you can get to a point where you've cultivated all the wisdom that you've needed and you're moving to this higher consciousness. So we're either walking towards the light or we're walking towards the darkness. Which direction we walk is a choice for us to make. And without understanding of these teachings and a lack of wisdom, people will oftentimes walk towards the darkness. But when you're understanding these teachings and you're training your mind, you can walk closer and closer towards the light, and you can see improvement to the condition of your mind as you're experiencing the purification of your mind by training it through the teachings that the Buddha is sharing with you. If we look around the world, we can see that there's a certain amount of pollution in the world that we've done over multiple generations. This is because the human mind is becoming more and more polluted over time because people have lost understanding of what it means to become a better and better human. You get on social media, you see people arguing and fighting and disparaging each other and trying to break each other down. It's like animals fighting, right? And you might even see it in real life from time to time. But while other people do that, you don't have to conform to that. You can understand that that's what those people are choosing to do, and you can choose not to learn that. Because remember, you learn from people that are around you, right? So you would like to understand that even though you see those people fighting and arguing and bickering on social media, that doesn't mean you have to do that. Or just because you see people fighting and arguing at a neighborhood center or in your community, that doesn't mean you have to do that. If they're interested in fighting and bickering, okay, they're fighting and bickering. If there's a cat and a dog fighting in my neighborhood, I'm not going to go out there and get in the middle of that. Hey, they want to fight, let them fight. Let them hurt each other. That's on them, right? I'm going to stay safe, right? So you don't have to get in the middle of all these fights and all these quarrels that people have. You can just maintain your peace and maintain your joy, right? Whereas if you're trying to get involved in people's arguments and fights and being hostile and bitter, you're just being an animal with those individuals. So we don't think about people as being in a hierarchy. You don't think of yourself as being above other people. Even when we talk about moving to this higher consciousness, you should never look down on other people. But you should understand there is a difference between someone who's training their mind and someone who's not training their mind. If someone's not training their mind, they're going to be very angry and bitter and hostile and harsh. But if you're training your mind and you're actively working to become a better and better human being, you can evolve to this higher consciousness and experience the benefits of having done so by experiencing more peace and more joy. So do you guys have any questions on this here? This is everything I have to share with you guys today. You guys had lots of questions about the 5 realms of existence, but do you have any other questions you would like to ask? So what I'll do then is I'll just end by thanking all of you guys for being interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for participating in today's class. If you guys would like to learn more, there's opportunities for you to do that. Tonight at 6:30, here, I'm going to be doing a meditation where I'm just going to guide students in meditation. And then I'm just going to open up to whatever questions that they have. We're going to be doing loving kindness meditation, which is a meditation that helps you to cultivate the love and kindness in your mind so you can be more gentle and loving and kind with the people around you, including yourself. If you have negative self-talk in your mind where you're degrading and diminishing yourself, it's no fun walking around with that. So there's a meditation that helps you with that. It knocks down your anger and your hatred and your ill will, which is what comes out of the mind when you're functioning like an animal. So I'm going to be doing that at 6:30 tonight. And then at 9 o'clock, I'm going to also be here teaching the same topic that I just taught, because there's people like in Europe right now that are sleeping. So I do it at 2 time zones so that everybody can attend a live class if they would like. And then next week on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching meditation as well. You can see all these options for learning on our bulletin board over there. You even see things like our game night and how we have like social events here every Friday at 6 o'clock. We'd play board games and we listen to music and have a good time. So you guys are welcome to come to any of these events. You'll find it on our bulletin board and our website as well. And you're also welcome to come talk with me and get plugged into these teachings, because even though we talked about this cycle of rebirth today and these 5 realms of existence, I recommend that people start with this first book at chapter 1. We're in chapter 20 now. I restart this program on August 9th, and you can attend while you're here, or you can attend online, but you can actually get this book for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon, and this would be the best place to start. Now we're a little bit deeper into this book, but at the beginning of the book, you're going to see all the core teachings that are helping you to understand how to train the mind, and that's the best place to really get started. And there's various programs to help you be able to gradually learn this and be able to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what the teachings of the Buddha are really for, is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But it's not the outside world that's hurting you. It's what's going on in your own mind. And the Buddha's teachings will help you to see that more and more clearly. So thank you all again for being here. And whatever you do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.